What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host. It's an emergency podcast. Woo! And, of course, to break down the firing of Doug Pederson, the parting ways of Doug Pederson, naturally, we have John Breech, Ryan Wilson, who's been home for 15 to 20 seconds since he arrived from Stanford, where he got pulled over for doing 88 in a 55 school zone, which just horrendous behavior by you. And of course, Deebo, whose head coach just got canned. In fact, Deebo and I were wrapping up. We're having our little post pod chat after recording with Jonathan Jones for Tuesday's episode. If you listen to that episode, that's why there's no Doug Pederson talk on there. And I said, oh my goodness, Deebo, Doug Pederson's fired. And I don't know if he believed me or not. I'm guessing no. I don't know. Did you believe me, Deebo?
Because I can tell you look at your phone, you get the alert, but I will always remember that you were the one that broke the Doug Pederson firing news to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely believed it because the way that like I said it wasn't like, haha, gotcha. It was like, oh, we got to go. We got to do a podcast. And here we are on Twitch and on YouTube. We will be doing these breaking news hirings and firings for coaches and GMs, any other big emergency podcast caliber news. We will be live on Twitch, twitch.tv/CBS Sports HQ and YouTube.com. Search for Pick Six Podcast, and you can watch us there live as the news breaks. Yes.
Right?
That's right, buddy. Thanks. Good talk.
Live podcasts are the best.
I'm live doing a podcast. Get out of here. Go.
This is how the sausage is made.
This is how the sausage is made. That's right. Go find mommy.
Deebo's literally going to be on a conference call, guys. Live ones are canceled. We're done.
This was my concern.
You okay? Uh-oh. Well, if he's not saying anything, he's probably fine, right? Deebo, you take the steering wheel for a second. I'll be right back.
All right. I want to start by thanking Doug Pederson. He was responsible for the best sports moment of my life. He coached one of the best games against one of the best coaches, the best coach of all time. That factors into everything that I'm about to say and we're about to say. He took over for an organization in disarray after the Chip Kelly disaster and experiment. And he was the gutsy leader to deliver them the first Super Bowl ever. So that is like the precedent that I have to set with my thanks for Doug Pederson. With this move, I'm surprised more by the timing, not necessarily that it happened. The timing is horrible. First, they asked him to tank last week and take the heat for all that BS that happened against the Giants. But there's just a clear lack of vision in my mind from Jeffrey Lurie, who I think's a good owner and made a good hire in Doug Pederson 5 years ago. But why not do it last week? Why does it take you 8 days to make this decision? You're 8 days behind everybody else, and you're clearly favoring Howie Roseman. You're loyal to Howie Roseman. I get the loyalty sense, but I think this is clear that Howie Roseman will be back in 2021. And I think hello to Carson Wentz, your 2021 Week 1 starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hey, yeah, no, Philadelphia Egos. That's exactly right. That was Let me ask you this, Deebo, because we all were just on HQ, and one of the questions I was asked was, if you're a new coach, do you have the power to say no on Carson Wentz? And my thing was, if you bring in someone, not they're going to do it, but for example, someone like Urban Meyer, his stature, he can come in and say, we're done with Carson Wentz, my way or the highway. But if it's Joe Brady, who's 30 years old, he's going to have to do whatever the owners or the GM tells him. Will the coach in your mind have the ability to say Carson Wentz has to be somewhere else?
Well, we got the report from Ian Rappaport that Doug Pederson was kind of fed up with being told what to do. So in that sense, that doesn't seem like a situation that Urban Meyer would be willing to join. You know, he wants a situation where he can go in and have control. And if Jeffrey Lurie's unwilling to relinquish that, I think you have to opt for one of the younger guys, which isn't a problem in my book. I would opt for someone that hasn't had a gig before and is an innovator and can be creative and kind of offer a spark to this team rather than some of the retreads we see out there, or even someone like Urban Meyer, who I don't fully believe in. I'm more on Brinson's side on that one. But I think it's not going to be that type of guy like Urban Meyer. I think they might opt for someone that they can kind of control, because Doug Pederson clearly did not like that.
So which side do you think is right, though? You're okay rolling with Carson Wentz?
Well, I mean, if I may jump back in, and thanks for asking, my son is fine. I think this is Breech. Have you said anything since we started, or have you just been silent?
I'm smiling. Well, I was going to go on to that point, but you were so flustered that I thought I would let you jump in real quick.
Yeah,
I will say just real quick that Wilson, you brought up Urban Meyer. I think if someone goes into that interview and says, yeah, I don't really want to play Carson Wentz next year, they're not getting hired. That's just, they're not going to call him back. There's no second interview. So no one like Urban Meyer would take the job, as Deebo said. And you know, ESPN
is that good or bad though? That's what I'm asking. I'm trying to figure out, is that good or bad for the future of the organization?
Probably not good.
Probably what?
I thought
let's put it, I don't think this is being stated enough. Like, I listened to Jonathan Jones on HQ. I didn't hear you guys talk, but I was downstairs checking on my kid, man. What do you want?
I want you to bring your cell phone and watch us on mobile.
Fair. You can watch CBS Sports HQ 24/7 anywhere on your mobile platforms, devices, wherever. I feel like this is very clearly the Eagles choosing Carson Wentz over Doug Pederson. I mean, like, I don't think, like, it's pretty obvious and simple. Now, if they trade, we'll look like an idiot if they trade Carson Wentz later, but
no. But so my question is this the best path for the future of this team? But that's what I'm asking.
I don't know that that's the right question, because I don't think you could do anything with Carson Wentz. Like, I think you almost by default had to continue on with Carson Wentz because of his contract. And therefore, if you wanted to keep Doug Pederson had to continue with Carson Wentz. So now you have to go out and find, by virtue of this decision, a coach who is going to want to work with Carson Wentz, build up his confidence, improve his quality of play. And so, no, Ryan, to answer your question, I don't think that this is a good path for the organization, but I sort of feel like they basically built two giant walls along a pathway and have to continue to walk down it because it's too high to climb.
I agree with that, and I didn't think it had to be that way. Kind of when it first came out, you know, you put the Eagles, we did the head coaching vacancies, ranking them last week. I probably would put them in the middle of the pack at this point, and then you get those reports and you slot them towards the bottom, because if Jeffrey Lurie's going to have that control, a lot of coaches don't want to enter the situation. But I think, to Ryan's point, I don't think it had to be Carson or Doug, who I will fondly refer to during this episode as only Doug, but
R.I.P. Doug. Hey, how about Doug going out immediately after the Nickelodeon football game?
That's a nice tie-in. But
I should have announced his firing on Nickelodeon.
Doug got slimed.
Yeah, I mean, Howie should have gone first. Howie should have been the one to go. I don't think.
Okay, so on that really quickly, I think when you read Jeffrey Lurie's statement, he says, I spent the past few weeks evaluating yada, yada, yada. But he said, Coach Pederson and I had the opportunity to sit. He doesn't even call him Doug. Deebo, Jeffrey Lurie. He works for him. Don't even call him Doug.
Okay.
Coach Pederson and I had the opportunity to sit down and discuss what that collective vision would look like moving forward. After taking some time to reflect on these conversations, I believe it is in both of our best interest to part ways. To me, that reads that he sat down with Doug Pederson and he said, what do we need to do? What in your mind do we need to do to win moving forward? And Doug Pederson said something along the lines of, Carson ain't it, and neither is Howie.
Well, here's, I think, an important note from Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer, who's very, very tied into Jeffrey Lurie in that front office. He reported this about 45 minutes before the firing came out. He said, on top of promoting Press Taylor to offensive coordinator, Doug Pederson's coaching suggestions to Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie also had Andrew Briner moving from the pass game analyst to QB's coach, promoting Matt Burke from DL to DC, or bringing in an ex-DB's coach, Corey Unlin, back as defensive coordinator. So just really promoting from within. Jeffrey Lurie wanted some external candidates and just some fresh faces, some fresh voices within that coaching room. Doug Pederson wanted to keep it all to his own guys. And I think that played a large role in why that decision didn't take place last Sunday or last Monday and is happening, like I said, 8 days later.
And Jeff McClain also tweets out that this is boiling. Did you read this one where Pederson threatened to quit? And the Eagles didn't take it seriously after he made him fire Mike Groh. And then Howie Roseman, meanwhile, will be involved.
That was last year, though, right?
Yeah, but they're saying that Pederson threatened to quit last year. So basically, and again, this, I cannot stress this enough. It goes back to what we say with these head coach vacancies. You need to be organizationally aligned. And as Jeff McClain points out, I don't know if has Jeff been on the podcast before? Jeff and I are real life friends. I mean, but I don't know if we had.
Sounds like it. You know,
not during my tenure. Not during my tenure.
But we should have Jeff on. Jeff's the best.
Brinson, you have a very loose definition of friends.
That's true.
Yeah, I think so, but that's okay. I mean,
that's not a problem.
I mean, like, he's not like coming. He's not like if I get divorced or remarried, I'm not invited to my wedding or anything. But I mean, like, whatever.
All right.
Anyway, he said that it'll be his third hiring of a head coach. That is, as Jeff points out, unprecedented for a modern day NFL GM. It is his fourth coach because he was with Andy Reid, then Chip Kelly, now Doug Pederson, and one more. And Pederson and Roseman had decreasingly seen eye to eye on personnel. It ain't going to work like that.
Oh, yeah. That personnel that was JJ Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson over Jalen Reagor. I think I'm siding with Doug on that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't know that Doug was necessarily picking the obvious selections at wide receiver, but I agree with you. And also, you would have to think that Howie Roseman is saying, no, this is what we're doing from a personnel perspective to build around Carson. And I said this on HQ, and I've been saying this for weeks and months, that it's clear to me, and I think it should be more clear now, that Carson Wentz and Doug Pederson's offense is not built for Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz is not the type of quarterback to operate Doug Pederson's offense. It's a rhythm, like in structure offense. And Carson Wentz likes to be out of structure, likes to make plays with his legs, likes to extend plays. And I don't think that that's the sort of fit. And he didn't.
Well, hold on. Let me ask Deebo something. How much has the offense changed from Frank Reich to Doug Pederson, though? Has it changed a lot?
A little bit. I mean, something that I brought up throughout the season, I was just super frustrated. And I thought one of their biggest issues was the lack of an offensive coordinator. We talk about all the time how difficult it is to do so many jobs when you're the head coach. It's fine if Doug Pederson is the CEO type and has a little bit control over the offense and can hop in those meetings and offer some influence. But when he's running the entire show and doesn't have an actual offensive coordinator, that's a problem. And we saw that come to fruition since Frank Reich left. John DeFilippo left. So that's an issue. I wish they had an offensive coordinator.
Was there any concern inside the Jets, the Eagles? What are we talking about? The Eagles bubble, that Week 17 thing was sort of a FU from Pederson, or was that sort of planned from top to bottom?
It had to have been the entire organization knowing, because if they didn't, I think they fire him that night. I don't think they wait that long.
So now I'm my conspiracy theory brain says, so they went from 9th, which is the pick they would have had they won, to 6th. And now they fired the coach 8 days later. I mean,
it's all Carson Wentz. I mean, you look at last week.
Let me ask you,
ESPN had that report that the Wentz-Pederson relationship was fractured beyond repair. So without a doubt that, and everyone was talking about, well, this obviously means that Carson Wentz is going to get traded because there's no way they're going to fire a guy who just won a Super Bowl for them 3 years ago. But it was pretty clear that one of them had to leave. And it does feel like when Pederson met with Jeffrey Lurie today, Lurie's like, all right, well, what's your vision to win? And Pederson probably said something like, well, I'm going to give the quarterback job to whoever earns it, whoever fits my system best. And Lurie said, okay, so Carson Wentz is your starting quarterback, and I'm paying him $128 million, so he needs to be the starter. And Pederson's like, no, like, that's not what I said. We're not doing that. If Jalen Hurts is better, I'll play him. And then that probably starts an argument about all the personnel and how Pederson doesn't have a say in any of this. And he probably said, all right, I'm gone. I don't even care what you guys, peace out.
But based on everything we've seen up to the moment now we're talking, now that Doug Pederson's been fired, going from losing to go from 9th to 6th. So, Brinson, over under 38%. Now they draft a quarterback at number 6.
The Eagles?
Yeah.
Did you say 36%?
That's fine. I said 38, but 36.
Brian Westbrook homage? Wasn't he 36?
What would the number have been before today, Wilson?
Like 10. Like I'm now thinking, okay, they're starting over. I know the Carson angle makes sense in terms of that, but if somebody comes in who's like a heavyweight coach and they're like, we love whoever, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Carson Wentz, maybe Carson Wentz is injured, and maybe that's a big deal.
Another North Dakota quarterback.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But I just feel like you don't lose a football game in the way they lost it to get up 3 spots to get up to number 6 to take a wide receiver if everything else is fine. I get it, but everything else isn't fine. And the biggest issue is quarterback.
I mean, I think it's like
2%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
I mean, you don't fire Doug Pederson, and if you're Carson Wentz's contract makes him unmovable for 1 to 2 years. Now, look, if you are in love with a quarterback, you can draft him. But I have to think that as these proceedings went along, that Howie Roseman convinced Jeffrey Lurie that it's not Carson, that it's Doug, and that Carson can be fixed. You can't go to Jeffrey Lurie and be like, no, we need to get rid of Doug Pederson and stick with me. I'm the guy. I know I haven't drafted a Pro Bowler since 2016. I signed Wentz to this disaster of an extension, and we just won 4 games with a roster that everyone has pointed out on Twitter, as I'm sure you're very aware, in which features a bunch of wide receivers with guys who were much better and much more obvious candidates to be drafted that were drafted behind them. But you know what we should do is just let's draft another quarterback. Like, that's not going to fly.
And if you're trying to repair your relationship with Carson Wentz, the last thing you can do is undermine him. I mean,
we don't know.
Well, he clearly wasn't happy about taking Jalen Hurts in the second round. That seemed to cause a little bit of a rift in the organization. If you go out and draft a quarterback in the first 2 rounds for the second straight year, when you just gave this other quarterback a 4-year, $128 million extension, Carson Wentz won't show up to practice, probably quit the team.
What has shown you?
Look, Ryan.
Wait. What has shown you that they're all in on Carson Wentz? That's all I'm asking.
They just fired Doug Pederson.
Yeah, they fired their Super Bowl winning coach.
They gave him a new contract and fired Doug.
Okay.
Ryan, I think that what you're saying about the situation and what's happening with the Eagles and their decision making is correct. It's all bad. This is what happened. This is how good organizations go bad, is that Howie Roseman's job is in jeopardy. He's been involved in 3 head coaching hires. Or he's hiring his 3rd. He's been involved with now 4 coaching staffs. His quarterback is a head case and the talking point of the entire offseason, like the number 1 talking point of the offseason around the NFL circles. But if you're him, the only way to salvage your job is to you got to kind of dip into the crevasse and hope you're able to pull the plane back up before everything becomes a disaster. And it might become a disaster because while Howie Roseman has done a lot of good things and brought a Super Bowl title to Philadelphia, there are a lot of red flags about his personnel approach over the last 3 to 4 years.
So, Deebo, 24 hours ago, what was the biggest issue facing the Eagles, Howie Roseman or Doug Pederson?
I think it's Howie Roseman and the places he's put this team over the past couple of years. Look, Doug has been far from perfect. He's had his offensive play calling lapses. I think he's lost a little bit of that power over the team that he displayed during the first couple of seasons when they were on the up and up. But I think there's just an issue, and Brinson kind of hit on it, where for a majority of my lifetime and my Eagles watching lifetime, starting really around like the Andy Reid era, this has been a very well-run organization. I think that's always been clear, even though through a couple of down years with Chip Kelly, this is just a clear, poorly run organization, series of events, series of the past week that I'm not happy with the future of it right now. And as long as Howie Roseman is attached to that, I think there are issues. As much as I like to look at the past and thank Howie again, like Doug, for what he did during the Super Bowl year, he is not the answer moving forward, and he's proven that over the past couple of years, getting them into this position.
So what happened over the last 2 years?
Real quick, the problem with that, though, is if Roseman is the problem, he just won the tug of war with Doug Pederson. He's going to get to hire the next coach, so he's at least sticking around through the next head coach, almost certainly, unless the Eagles go like 2-14 over the next 2 seasons. So now you're stuck with Roseman for probably at least 3 more years minimum.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah. And look, Howie Roseman has survived worse. I think
worse. Chip Kelly?
Chip Kelly banned him to stuck him in solitary confinement.
And Roseman's contract runs through 2022, just in case anyone was wondering, as did Pederson's before he got
nobody heard a peep from Howie Roseman for like 2.5 years until he somehow salvaged, to climb back up and got Jeff Lurie's ear again and managed to work his way. He knows what he's doing in terms of handling power structures within and navigating that within an organization. I don't think he has as much malintent as like a Jack Easterby or anything like that, but
it's an interesting situation. And, like Chip Kelly, when you make the playoffs in your first year getting hired, even though he was absolutely crazy with everything he did, that gives you a little bit of power. And so maybe that is where you see Roseman get knocked out. If he hires a coach who goes 14-2 next year and all of a sudden says, "Hey, Jeffrey Lurie, I need a little bit more power. Howie Roseman is kind of handcuffing me here." Then maybe you see something happen, but otherwise, it's hard to see Roseman going anywhere for the next few years.
Howie Powie.
Howie Powie. I'm going to get a shirt that says Howie Powie.
Howie Roseman is going to be given an opportunity to hire the next head coach. Who will that head coach be? Ryan, you kill me. Who will that next head coach be? Let's take a quick break. Oh my God. Let's take a quick break and we come back. We'll try to part two. So, Howie Roseman again.
You always said Howie Powie.
Howie Powie.
Howie Powie. Power Howie.
Sure.
Howie Roseman's going to be in charge of hiring the next head coach. A couple of names have been bandied about early on. The first one, Ian Rappaport of NFL Media pointed out, Mike Kafka, former, I don't know if you guys know this. So they're going to fire Doug Pederson, a former Eagles backup, and one of Andy Reid's top assistants, to hire Mike Kafka, a former Eagles backup and one of Andy Reid's top assistants. What? You can't do it.
Work the first time.
Sure.
Before I guess we fully delve into coaches, I mean, Doug Peterson's 5-year tenure is still an absolute success because you win a Super Bowl, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Like,
he went to the playoffs 3 times and won a Super Bowl, and went to the playoffs once with Carson Wentz head unraveling and nobody around him.
Just wanted to
and maybe better than the Super Bowl, he gave us that Week 17 moment where destroyed Giants fans.
Loved it. Screw you, Giants fans. But it seems crazy. Off of that point, it seems crazy.
Before we go to the Kafka thing, do you want to point out where Doug Pederson might land, or do you want to talk Eagles candidates?
Well, I would just say, I'm not opposed to Mike Kafka, or on top of that, I would target Eric Bieniemy. I am not afraid of the Andy Reid tree again, because I do think the Doug Pederson situation worked for a certain amount of time. Situations were not put in his favor, and the Howie Roseman thing is an issue in my mind, but I would not hesitate to revisit the Andy Reid coaching tree. Bieniemy preferably over Kafka at this point, but I'm open to it. I'm open to revisiting that.
Deebo, the opposite of that, though, is that maybe the Andy Reid coaching tree is afraid to revisit the Eagles. Maybe Andy Reid's sending out a mass text to his coaching tree saying, guys, stay far away from that job. You just see what they did to Doug Pederson. The guy won a Super Bowl and they still fired him. If I'm Eric Bieniemy or Kafka, I'm a little hesitant to get in that situation where a guy who actually had success got let go. So I'm not sure I'm taking that job if I'm Kafka or Bieniemy.
Yes, Bieniemy, I would be hesitant because he has opportunities elsewhere. Kafka hasn't really been tossed around as a head coach this soon.
The Eagles tried to hire Kafka as the offensive coordinator last offseason, but Andy Reid blocked it.
Right. If he has that opportunity, being as young as he is and not getting as many looks as Bieniemy, I think he would have to seriously consider, despite anything Andy Reid, Doug Pederson, or those around him would say.
I mean, I believe that Andy Reid has spoken about Mike Kafka in a way that implies he may be the smartest of his proteges yet, at least in terms of former backup quarterbacks former quarterbacks who ended up being his offensive coordinators, ahead of Matt Nagy, ahead of Doug Peterson. I don't know.
Ahead of Matt Nagy? You know where I'm at. You know where I'm at on guys that are.
By the way, Mike Kafka leapfrogs Eric Bieniemy for a job. You better watch out, because there's going to be some people.
To my point, I mean, my talking points on guys that have score hundreds on their football IQ tests. That ain't what the coaching job is for the head coach. You have to be able to motivate these people. I mean, that's what it is. Now, as a Steelers fan, I love Mike Tomlin's ability to motivate, but he's terrible on punting situations. So you have to have some balance there. But just because you're really good at drawing plays up, that doesn't necessarily translate to being a great coach. And we do it every year. Adam Gase is the smartest person on planet Earth when it comes to making football plays. He's an absolute disaster as a head coach. So, I mean, I don't know anything about Mike Kafka. He might be great at his job. And if he gets that coaching job, I wish him all the success in the world. But I think it seems like every year that gets lost. You have to be able to motivate these guys.
Kafka's 33, and that's interesting because I would be enticed by someone like Joe Brady, who's being tossed around on Eagles Twitter right now as an offensive mastermind. But we have no idea if he can run an organization and run a team. Which
him do a press conference, like because he was hired as a 30-year-old first-time offensive coordinator in the pandemic, as Jonathan Jones and I talked about in the coaching rumors and Deshaun Watson show for tomorrow.
But you also look at Roseman's track record here. That was a sneaky hire with Chip Kelly that kind of came out of nowhere. There was some chatter, and then all of a sudden it was like, it's not going to happen. Chip Kelly's turned down the NFL so many times, and it just came out of the blue. And then obviously Doug Pederson was going back to the Andy Reid coaching tree, the familiar thing. And I don't think he would do that 2 times in a row, as weird as that sounds.
Going back to firing Doug Pederson to hire an Andy Reid assistant feels.
That's why I don't think he would do it.
It just feels so incestuous and weird, and
I don't know. I mean, Andy Reid's been around forever. Bill Belichick's been around forever. They have a ton of guys.
It's like your spouse breaks up with you and starts dating your brother.
That's exactly what it is. That's a great comp, Breech. That's one
Weird
of the analogies we've had.
Bring up that it's pretty rare for a GM to get to hire his third head coach. I think it's pretty interesting to revisit who the Eagles looked at in 2016 and just kind of apply that to today. Tom Coughlin, Paul Gunther, Doug Pederson, Adam Gase, Dirk Cutter, Doug Marrone, Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Adam Gase, and Deuce Staley is a long list of people.
It may be a Freudian or Kafka like slip, Deebo, but you said Adam Gase twice.
He got it twice.
Somebody needs to send that list to Jeffrey Lurie.
What is that?
Send that list to Jeffrey Lurie and
some Adam Gase noises.
Oh.
All I want in this world is the Eagles to hire Adam Gase as their head coach now.
That list is troubling. That list would concern me as an Eagles fan.
They made the right one. I mean, we remember Mike Lombardi, who was shouted out in the parade.
Got murdered by Jason Kelsey.
Wearing right here the whole speech on my shirt.
There you go.
The clown, Mike Lombardi.
Hey, let me ask Brinson. I'll ask you, then Breech, then I'll let Deebo finish last because he's the guy. Cody Benjamin, our buddy, our coworker, also a huge Eagles fan, just tweeted this out. Who will be remembered as the better coach in Philadelphia, Andy Reid or Doug Pederson?
Oof.
Well, only one of them has a statue.
And you have to be able to block out what Andy Reid's done since he got to Kansas City. It's just strictly the Andy Reid years.
I said this on HQ too. It's like, if you're going to keep hiring these Andy Reid guys, it's like at some point, do you wish you hadn't fired Andy Reid? I do think,
yes.
Even if I say that, I mean, they probably do, but Andy Reid had lost his son. I just think Philadelphia was an unhappy place for him and he needed a new start to do what he's able to do now. I think he probably would have figured it out at some point. But Andy Reid was the better coach. Andy Reid's the better coach. Doug Pederson learned everything he got from Andy Reid. And then he got, I'm not trying to Prisco you here, Deebo, but that Super Bowl win. I mean, you win it with the backup quarterback.
Stop it.
Oh, come on. It's a
Doesn't bother me.
A lifetime opportunity. When your MVP caliber quarterback tears his ACL 3/4 of the way through the season, you're supposed to be toast.
Yes.
And the Eagles pulled off one of the all-time coups in terms of just storming the playoffs, taking everyone, taking control of everything and being in charge at the end. I don't know what that was.
All right. So I think it goes back and we can revert to our franchise 5 exercise that we did in the offseason when you're kind of arguing who's the best Eagles quarterback in franchise history. Is it Nick Foles who delivered them that Super Bowl, or is it Donovan McNabb, Randall Cunningham, Ron Jaworski, who never delivered a Super Bowl but were an actual better quarterback for a longer time on the football field? So, I'm very appreciative of Andy Reid's time. I recognize he's a better coach. He's one of the top 5-6 coaches in NFL history. But in terms of importance to the Eagles, Doug got it done.
Wow.
Nice.
Doug Pederson doesn't exist without Andy Reid. It's disrespectful.
Deebo's getting a Doug Pederson tattoo.
I'm not doing that one bit, but if I'm thinking about 2017, I'm appreciative of what Andy Reid did, but he didn't win in 2005. Doug Pederson won in 2017.
Yeah. By the way, Radio Monkey 95 in the Twitch chat asked, Lurie was backed into a corner and he just comments, and I think this is a good comment. Lurie was backed into a corner and made the most inexpensive change. Even if Howie's the problem, Wentz wouldn't work with Doug. I think that's right. It's basically looking at, okay, how do we try to reboot this with it costing the least? What is the path of least resistance financially for this organization to try and get back on track? And you are already committed to the quarterback. You can find another coach and it doesn't count against your salary cap. You are in on Howie Roseman for better or for worse. And that's where they are. By the way, I think I don't know if you can find it anywhere where you can bet on it. It was like 40-1 last week. And we floated this, by the way, on this podcast like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Doug Pederson to the Jets. I think that's happening.
Okay. I mean, I don't feel he's better than Adam Gase, but I don't know are you excited if you're a Jets fan?
I mean, so this is Joe Douglas's first coaching hire of his life. He's hiring in the pandemic. You are going to, the interviews are, it's difficult to pull off. Like you're not going to, you don't, unless you know, even if you know somebody well from prior days, like even if you grew up with Arthur Smith or Eric Bieniemy, you don't know how they're going to be as a head coach. You know how Doug Peterson's going to be as a head coach. And if you believe you can work with him and you guys are going to be on the same page and he can come in and maybe I think Sam Darnold would be a really good fit in Doug Peterson's offense.
Why would Sam Darnold be and not Carson Wentz? I mean,
but also if you go to New York, you're getting Joe Douglas is going to talk to you. Hey, do you want Sam Darnold or do you think we should draft the number 2 overall guy? Howie Roseman's not doing that. He's making this decision for you and then telling you to go win with the guy he picked, even though that guy might not fit the system of the coach. So I think that Doug Pederson would love to have a close relationship with a general manager. And if he has that in New York, I think that makes them the clear front runner.
Every coach wants to have a close relationship with the general manager.
Not every coach.
And there's no
Doug Pederson are tight.
And there's no guarantee that the Jets are going to ask Doug Pederson what he thinks about the number 2 pick. They may not want a quarterback if it's not Trevor Lawrence. So
Douglas is making the call. I mean, if he hires Doug Pederson,
Breech just said the opposite. That's why I'm saying.
No, I didn't. I said that Doug Pederson would be allowed to talk to the general. If he gets hired by the Jets, it's going to be because he has say in whether or not they keep Sam Darnold or whether they take a quarterback over the number 2 overall pick.
They could very easily not like a quarterback at number 2 because the quarterbacks may not be worth the number 2 pick. That's what I just said. So
that's what I said before. You said that you questioned.
That's why I think that the New York job is an attractive one because you have, I would much rather go. I cannot believe I'm saying this.
Oh boy,
I'd much rather go to the Jets and be the head coach than go to the Eagles and be the head coach.
But here's the thing: we're saying the Eagles is a mess, and all Carson Wentz has to do is get back to 85% of what he was, and then everything's relatively fine in the division. Where I don't think these teams are magically going to get better overnight. All right. I mean, Dak will be back, so maybe the Cowboys are concerned they have a contract thing to worry about there.
It's got a reasonably high floor, and Joe Judge showed some stuff with the Giants. I don't think this division is necessarily just complete crap. And look, the Bills are awesome. The Dolphins are coming on, and the Patriots still have Bill Belichick, and who knows if they can reload or not. But the fact that you have a GM who's well respected in Joe Douglas, who especially if you're Doug Pederson, you've worked with before and you know how he operates. You have the path where you can take the number 2 overall pick. And your quarterback, you can draft a quarterback there, whether it's Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or Justin Fields, or maybe Urban Meyer gets hired in Jacksonville and takes Fields 1, and all of a sudden you have Trevor Lawrence. Or if you think you can make Sam Darnold work, you go in that direction. They have a ton of cap space, a ton of picks. I think it's just an attractive job. And if Joe Douglas may feel like the safest path to develop a quarterback in New York and the safest path to avoid the pitfalls that come around for many GMs and coaches with these power struggles is by hiring a guy in Doug Pederson who, by all accounts, gives no craps about trying to run a front office or anything like that. Like Doug Pederson wants to coach and he wants to work with somebody who will be aligned in his vision in terms of acquiring players that he can help coach.
So that sounds like he wants to have some involvement in the front office. So it can't be both. You just said
Doug Pederson does not want front office involvement.
He left Philadelphia because he wasn't on the same page with the general manager.
But that's different than front office involvement.
Well, Wilson's saying it's hard for those to be mutually exclusive. If he's saying, here's my personnel, here's my scheme, I need personnel to fit this scheme, and the general manager saying, well, this guy's more talented than this guy who's slightly less talented that would fit your scheme better, I'm going to take the more talented guy. Pederson wants the GM that's going to say, all right, I'm going to go for your scheme. I know what your scheme is. We're going to try and get players to fit that.
Well, I mean, I think I mean, I think if you're not working like that together, then you have inherently a much bigger problem on your hands.
That's why Pederson's no longer in Philadelphia. And you know what? If you were Doug Pederson's agent, or who do you think makes the most sense for him? Because obviously Joe Douglas is there. I think it's the Chargers. I think if I'm Doug Pederson, I'm getting my agent and I'm telling him to call the Chargers. I know I'm tight with Joe Douglas. That's probably my second choice, but I think the Chargers would make the most sense for him. And I think they're an instant contender if they have a coach like Doug Pederson next year.
Chargers. Was that my favorite job? I can't remember what the list was.
I had the Chargers and Breech had the Jaguars.
I had Jacksonville, but I think Jacksonville's the best for a first-time coach. If you're an established coach like Pederson, I think the Chargers make more sense.
We'll revisit it when the Texans hire a coach, but you two guys missed on that badly.
Badly.
We had the Texans at 4
out of 6.
Yeah, that's not high or low.
Texans.
He had them at like 3.
Would you rather take the Texans job or the Eagles job?
Texans dead last. Eagles. The quarterback wants out.
Yeah, your quarterback's Carson Wentz.
The quarterback didn't want out when we made the rankings.
No excuses, Breech. No excuses. If you're explaining, you're losing.
I mean, if Deshaun Watson is dead set on leaving Houston, then Houston is absolutely the worst job on the list.
I told you guys that it wasn't going to work, and no one listened to me.
I don't think that's what happened. Sorry. So where does so we slotted previously, we all agree that the Chargers and Jaguars are 1 and 2. We think that the Jets are probably 3.
I can't remember. I got to find the list, Breech.
Okay.
Yes, we had Chargers, Jacksonville, Jets as our top 3 consensus in different orders, but that was the top 3. And then you have Texans, Lions, Falcons, Eagles left over.
I'm going to assume that none of you would place the Eagles above any of those 3. You would put the Eagles 4th, is where you're saying.
I think so, yeah.
Talk me to why you have the Eagles 4th.
Breech, who are my last 3 teams?
The other ones, you had the Texans last, and I'm not sure what order you had. Lions, Falcons. Falcons 4, Lions 5.
Yeah. So I don't think the Eagles are that far off. I think the Falcons have a lot more questions. I think Carson Wentz, I'm just going to assume that he's not healthy. That's the only way you can go from playing the way he played to playing like he's a person that learned how to play football 15 minutes ago. So I'm going to assume he's going to be 75 to 80% of Carson Wentz next year. And if that's the case, then you're going to win some football games. You have to get the right person in there to stroke his ego, make him feel good about himself. And based on the list Deebo read about the 2016 head coaching candidates, I'm not 100% sure they're going to get the guy. But if they get the guy, I think they're in the mix. So there are issues in New York, by the way. I mean, I love Joe Judge, but he had to bring in Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett had to bring Mark Colombo with him. Mark Colombo got fired in the middle of the season. Jason Garrett's probably going to be out on his way out. So not everything is hunky-dory around the NFC East. Dak Prescott's going to be back. That's great, but who knows what his contract situation is going to be like. Their defense is terrible, and football team doesn't have a quarterback. So I think there's a chance with Carson Wentz in the right mindset that they can actually, make some noise.
Yeah. Fun fact, guys, the longest tenured head coach in the NFC East is Ron Rivera.
I know.
He's been there for 1 season.
Because he was slightly ahead of Joe Judge and
that's nuts. Mike McCarthy
in terms of the timing of the hirings. It's pretty wild. So
Ryan, when you ranked the teams last Tuesday, you had Chargers, Jaguars, Falcons, Jets, Lions, Texans.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I might now switch the Jets to 3, move the Falcons down to 5, and put the Eagles at 4. I think that's what I would do now.
I think I might take the Falcons. We have the Texans at 4. See, now I'm.
Oh boy,
wasn't it? Well,
Ryan just switch it. You can switch it. Move the Texans to the last.
I may move the Texans to the bottom.
They're last.
They are last.
I mean, that's a little less hard to pick down.
You want to dunk?
A double dunk.
Oh, what a big jam! Wallace took it in his hands and said, "Up and away, Dipsy-doo, Dunkaroo."
There you go.
Because literally, Brinson, our entire argument for having them at 4 was that you get Deshaun Watson, and if he wants out, then they're last. That's it.
And also, when we were doing those rankings, if I'm not incorrect, and this is the sentiment among people around the league, is that Jack Easterby had been pushed aside. They were bringing in a search firm. The search firm was going to recommend GM candidates, and Cal McNair was going to listen to the search firm and then give Jack Easterby some role in the front office. But the GM was going to answer to Cal McNair. And then somewhere along the way, Jack Easterby brought out his little hypnotist watch, and he tricked Cal McNair to letting him hire Nick Caserio. And they took the report from the Corn Ferry folks who had told them to either hire Omar Khan from Pittsburgh. You dodged a bullet there, Wilson, because he's really smart, knows what he's doing. Or
quarterback
from ESPN. And instead, he hired Nick Caserio. And I don't know that Nick Caserio is a bad hire. I think Nick Caserio is probably a great hire as a GM. But Nick Caserio being hired means that Jack Easterby is now firmly in charge of many things involving the Texans and has alienated Deshaun Watson. So
in
me,
part because Deshaun just said, "Hey, can you just interview Eric Bieniemy?" Came highly recommended from Patrick Mahomes. Didn't say you had to hire him. Just talk to him. And they're so stupid they wouldn't just have an interview. They just said,
before you leak the news that you're hiring Caserio, pick up the phone and call Deshaun so he's not reading about it on Twitter. That's some basic like approach to any sort of business. By the way, Jonathan Jones, I dive into that in a lot more detail in Tuesday's podcast. So make sure and subscribe to the feed and check that out. But I think that move, it's weird because I think Caserio is a really good hire, but that move pushes the Texans down to last because you are now being hired for a job where you're working for Jack Easterby, who got Bill O'Brien fired in Houston. And you don't know if you're going to have Deshaun Watson, who is the most attractive part about that job. So I think we can move the Texans down to the bottom. Breech, for you, where do the Eagles slot with the Falcons and the Lions? Because I think it's pretty close for those three.
Yeah, I think I would probably put the Eagles at 5 with the Lions and Texans behind them.
So you have the Falcons just ahead.
Just ahead at 4.
You'd rather deal with Rich McKay than Howie Roseman.
I would rather deal with Rich McKay. And
why do you hate Rich McKay so much? He doesn't. I don't think he's.
I think the Falcons have a more enviable situation at quarterback where I would take next year maybe Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz. But if you want to get rid of Matt Ryan, if you trade him away and start over, I just feel like you have more options because I feel like the Eagles are absolutely tied to Carson Wentz.
So you would take Matt Ryan over.
Arthur Blank's already said the new coach can get rid of Matt Ryan if they want. So you have the option to do whatever you want, is what I'm saying. If you're comfortable with Matt Ryan, you take Matt Ryan. If you think he's too old, you get rid of him. You do not have that option in Philadelphia. You are Carson Wentz or you're not getting hired.
No, I'm asking a general question. On a neutral team, you would take Matt Ryan next year over Matthew Stafford.
Wait, Carson Wentz or Matthew Stafford?
I thought you mentioned Matthew Stafford.
No.
Oh, okay.
Matt Ryan over Carson Wentz just next year. Long term, Wentz is a lot younger. It's a lot different, but just for next year.
Okay.
Long term, I'll take Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford over Carson Wentz because you're not stuck to Carson Wentz's contract. Like if Carson Wentz plays well, it gives you a further dilemma. Or if he plays like okay, but not really well, it's a further dilemma. If you get in, if you jump on the Falcons and like you come in and say, listen, Matt Ryan, probably the greatest player in franchise history, which is kind of crazy to say. You could go Vic if you want, whatever. But you can come in and say, listen, Matt Ryan, you're sticking around. We want you. We may draft a quarterback. You need to understand that. And Matt Ryan says, I'm 36. I get it. It's no big deal. He's going to be on the books for 2021. It's a $50 million dead cap hit. He's not going anywhere next year. The new coach, if they get rid of Matt Ryan, would do so either because their young quarterback looks incredible if they draft him in the first round, or in ahead of 2022 when with a post June 1 release, 17.9 million in dead cap space with a trade before or release $26.5 million. So to me, the idea of having to deal with Matt Ryan's situation is much better than dealing with Carson Wentz's situation. Additionally, if you take that Falcons job, there is a chance that you can figure out a way to pair yourself with a GM. Whereas if you take the Eagles job, you are now Howie Roseman's fourth wife.
Yes, kind of.
So Jeff Kerr, another Eagles fan that works with us, put up a article real quick about the top candidates that the Eagles could go after. And we talked a little bit about the Chiefs guys, but not much beyond that. He has Bieniemy 1, Arthur Smith, Brian Dable, James Urban, Lincoln Riley, Jim Caldwell, Ryan's guy, Mike Kafka, Robert Salah, Brandon Staley, and Deuce Staley. Is there someone that stands out besides that Andy Reid tree and that Chiefs circle that could make the most sense for the Eagles?
I like Robert Salah based on what I've heard. Like, I don't know him personally. He's a good defensive coordinator, and he seems like the defensive players buy into what he's selling. That's sort of a big thing for me in terms of being a motivator. So I would be interested to see that. I know that Brandon Staley's done a great job. And he's a young guy. And wait, where's Staley? Staley is in
He's with the Rams.
the Rams.
Defense
That's
coordinator.
right.
Oh, Brandon
That's right,
Staley. I was like, no, Deuce is not with the Rams.
No, Brandon. Yeah, he took over.
Brandon Staley has been incredible this year.
But again, I don't know how he is in front of a group of people that he needs to motivate. That's sort of my thing. I mean, I'm not saying put a moron up there, but he gives great motivational speeches, but the balance. So I would like to see what Robert Saleh does. I don't know how he's interviewed in terms of whether people are impressed or not, but
Apparently had a bad interview with the Lions.
you did hear that. Okay.
I read that. I can't remember where I read it.
Okay. Saleh is on Bovado. I mean, and they take these coaching odds for with a massive chunk of salt, but he was minus 250 to get the Lions job because basically he's from near Detroit. This is an interesting note too, and it ties back to what Breech said about Chip Kelly and how Howie Roseman might approach this search. From Tim McManus at ESPN, and Tim does a really good job covering the Eagles, plugged in over there. Says some believe the Eagles will make a run at Oklahoma Sooners coach Lincoln Riley, who was mentioned in Jeff's list. He coached Hurts at the college level, has majored in the quarterback position, and is said to have a strong relationship with Eagles general manager Howie Roseman. It would probably take big money to lure Riley out of Norman, but they might view it as a wise investment. If you're Lincoln Riley, as we've talked about on this show a bunch, you don't have to leave Oklahoma anytime soon. I don't know if he's going to win a title there, but he's going to get a lot of looks every year because that's how it works, unless Sark comes in and just dominates at Texas all of a sudden, which maybe it happens, but it probably takes a little while. It would be almost identical to going from Andy Reid to Chip Kelly. Why do we keep changing colors? Are you doing something? As going from Doug to Lincoln Riley.
Thank you.
Parallels are pretty similar.
Yeah. And that seems like the kind of move that Roseman would make. And off of Kerr's list, besides that, I also like Brian Daboll just because he fixed Josh Allen. We've seen so much improvement from Josh Allen over the past 3 years, and that's what the Eagles want out of Carson Wentz. They want someone who can come in and kind of get his head straight and fix him, and Daboll's proven that he can do that. But yeah, I think Lincoln Riley with all those connections makes a lot of sense. And the fact that Roseman, I think, is going to feel like he needs to make a splashy hire. If you get rid of a Super Bowl winning coach, you need to win over the fans with the next hire. You can't. That's why I don't think a Mike Kafka is going to happen. You've got to bring in someone that's going to blow the fans away. And I think Lincoln Riley would do that.
Yeah, but I agree with you on Brian Daboll. Would Brian Daboll blow? You pretty much have to go that either super young route or a college coach to kind of wow the fans, which I don't need to appease the fans. Like, just make the best hire there. I like the guys that you mentioned. My top three are honestly probably Saleh, Daboll, and Eric Bieniemy.
Lincoln Riley's not your top three?
No.
And by the way, Chip Kelly was an innovative hire. People loved it at the time. And he came out.
Chip Kelly was fine for 2 years, and then he got personnel control and ran it into the ground.
Yeah, he was just a weirdo. I don't think Lincoln Riley's as much of a weirdo as Chip Kelly was. The culture was not there, and I wouldn't have those same concerns with Lincoln Riley.
I think the concern with Lincoln Riley, if you did go that route, is then, and not to stretch this out further, talking about the Eagles, but if his relationship is with Hurts. Like, he brought Hurts from Alabama to Oklahoma, and he coached Hurts, and they went, they went to the playoff, right? Or did they lose to Baylor in the Big 12 championship game?
They were a playoff team.
Yeah, they were a playoff team, right? They got throttled in the playoff, but they got throttled in the playoff. But they lost to LSU. They got throttled. That's right. That was the CD Lamb tweet, right? Anyway, I mean, like, is he coming in and is it a competition? Is Carson Wentz involved? Are you cutting Carson Wentz and rolling with Jalen Hurts? Is he trying to fix Carson Wentz? Do you want to take fragile Carson's ego and headspace and bring in one of Jalen Hurts' old coaches? I mean, is that what you want?
That is the knock there. I mean, if Carson Wentz, again, you're trying to repair your relationship with him, and bringing in Jalen Hurts as ex-coach is not going to help that at all.
Hiring like Jalen Hurts' dad to come coach the team.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I said at the top of the podcast, I think this move clearly signals that Carson Wentz is your week one starting quarterback. Jalen Hurts, if we had this discussion 3 weeks ago after the Saints game and people are anointing Jalen Hurts after 1 week or a week and a half that he's the franchise quarterback, things change and maybe Lincoln Riley makes sense, or maybe Doug Pederson's not in this situation. But I don't get the connection at this point in time based on what we saw from Jalen Hurts. And it seems like the apparent commitment that they've made to Carson Wentz.
So Ben Solak, who writes for Draft Network, who's an awesome guy. He also is a huge Eagles fan. He's just tweeted this out, and he sort of follows the Eagles closely as well. Realistically, no top candidates will take this job. It will have to be a college hire. We were talking about Riley. He mentioned Hiley, Dan Mullen, Dan Campbell. Campbell has said
Matt Campbell or Dan Campbell?
Iowa State.
That's Matt Campbell. Dan Campbell, right. Meathead, former Dolphins head coach.
Oh, right. Yeah, Matt Campbell. Sorry. So Dan Mullen, Florida. Matt Campbell, I think, said he's going back to Iowa State. Hasn't he? Maybe not. So anyway, to Solak's point, he says it'll have to be a college hire or a QB coach like Kafka, we've talked about, Pep Hamilton, who's had some success with Justin Herbert, and Alex Van Pelt. He also goes on to say that Andy Reid's going to tell Bieniemy to avoid Philly at all costs, in his opinion. So I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, Steve.
I'm seeing something on. Okay, here it is. Let's see. I'm seeing that it appears Matt Campbell has.
He's staying in Iowa State.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I heard that, but I wasn't sure.
What does that say about these jobs that he's staying at Iowa State?
You guys, I think you guys are getting hung up on the idea that Lincoln Riley, Dabo Sweeney, Matt Campbell, Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, those guys are making a ton of money with a lot.
All the control.
Yeah, they crush recruiting. You're not crushing recruiting in the NFL. I mean, it's a dogfight, and you can get out there and recruit better than the people in your conference. You're gonna win football games, and the pressure, even though you have booster pressure, and you got to win 9-10 games or whatever, it's a lot less than NFL pressure. I feel like.
Look, I've said all along that Dabo Sweeney is not going anywhere unless it's maybe Alabama to follow Saban when he leaves, and I don't think Saban's leaving anytime. I'm not sure Dabo even wants that pressure. And frankly, the only reason I bring up Dabo's name whenever there's a coaching opening on Twitter or on this podcast is because I wanted the hell out of my division. Get lost, Dabo. Get gone. I'm tired of Clemson dominating. Get lost.
Clemson's the least of your worries. You need 8 other coaches to leave too for State to have a chance.
How dare you?
Scott Murphy said,
"Hi, down hard." I will also add that, as I point out with Lincoln Riley, like that conference. Matt Rule bounced. It's just like you and Matt Campbell and now Sark. Like, and it is a clear path to the playoffs every year. For same for Dabo. I mean, as Lincoln Riley, like, why would you bother leaving?
Yep.
What were you saying, Deebo?
Just don't hire Jason Garrett.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
Shoot it in my vein.
I would take Adam Gase 1,000 times over Jason Garrett.
Oh my God.
I would too. I mean, it's not even close.
People watching on Twitch, Adam Gase or Jason Garrett? What do you think?
Who would want Adam Gase?
I just want to know what they think. Adam Gase or Jason Garrett?
Jason Garrett, 28-1 odds.
If that emerges where those are the top two guys who are the candidates for it, it's just, I mean, this is going to turn into the most entertaining podcast on the planet. Just, it's like all of a sudden Deebo and everybody in the podcast chat is saying Gase. I mean, it's all of a sudden like it's just the Deebo show where we just live broadcast the Eagles deciding between Adam Gase and Jason Garrett, and Deebo just staring at it and suffering through it.
Right. Incredible. Go from normally pretty mild mannered to
rage Deebo. Okay. Is that
that's it?
That's it. That's the emergency podcast. It appears to have run roughly an hour long. But Doug Pederson, huge news, a big time coach opening, and lots of drama remaining in the Eagles organization. Thanks to everybody for popping on. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and subscribe to Twitch so you get notifications. Subscribe below. Subscribe to Twitch. You get notifications when we go live. The same for YouTube. See you guys later.